What happens when someone who has built her entire public persona on charm, sophistication, and careful image control suddenly finds herself humiliated in front of millions of people? Imagine the cameras flashing, the audience roaring, and a single comment, just one perfectly timed, razor-sharp jab, turning everything upside down. That's exactly what happened on the iconic Saturday Night Live stage, when Colin Jost, armed with his signature humor, delivered a line that left Meghan Markle frozen, flustered, and furious. And it wasn't just any joke. No, this one carried weight. It carried judgment. It branded Meghan as a holiday hypocrite and cemented her status in 2025 as one of LA's most talked about and debated public figures. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all began with anticipation. Saturday night, live television, a stage with history. This wasn't just any performance. It was SNL, the cultural touchstone that can launch careers or utterly humiliate the unprepared. Meghan Markle, the Duchess-turned-Hollywood figure, had made appearances before that were calculated to perfection. Carefully curated outfits, rehearsed smiles, polite waves, measured laughs. But this time, the rules were different. This time, she wasn't in control. Colin Jost, long known for his incisive wit, was. And live audiences? Unpredictable. Social media? Instant. The ingredients for disaster were all aligned. Before the live broadcast, Meghan had walked into the studio with her usual confidence, her entourage trailing behind her like a miniature security and PR army. Dressed impeccably, a soft cashmere coat hugging her frame, she exuded the aura of someone who could walk into a room and immediately command it. Montecito glamour met New York sophistication, and for a moment, it seemed the cameras would capture yet another flawless public appearance. But the stage has its own rules. The audience has its own voice. And Colin Jost has his own sense of timing, razor-sharp and merciless. The first whispers of tension started backstage. Sources say that as Meghan adjusted her outfit in the mirror, there were murmurs among producers about how best to introduce her, how to avoid embarrassment, how to make her seem relatable without undercutting her carefully cultivated image. Yet, live television, by its very nature, doesn't adhere to scripts, and neither does Colin Jost. That night, the introduction was smooth, the audience clapping politely, waiting for the punchline that was about to land. And land it did. Hard. Holiday hypocrite. Just those two words. Short, simple, devastating. The audience erupted. Laughter bounced through the studio, some of it nervous, some of it delighted. And Meghan? She froze. Her smile faltered. The carefully constructed mask of poise cracked, if only for a moment, before she quickly attempted to regain control. But the damage was done. The phrase began circulating online almost instantly, capturing the imagination of millions. Twitter exploded, TikTok churned out clips, Instagram stories lit up like Christmas trees. Every major media outlet ran with the joke, dissecting it, debating it, exaggerating it. And that was just the beginning. Why does this matter now? Because Meghan Markle isn't just a celebrity. She's a cultural flashpoint. Her every action, every word, every appearance is scrutinized, dissected, and reinterpreted in ways few public figures experience. Being called a holiday hypocrite wasn't simply a joke, it was an indictment. A challenge to her carefully maintained image as a philanthropic, socially conscious figure. And in LA's elite circles, where image is currency, that sting was sharper than any criticism she had faced before. Adding fuel to the fire was the boutique's 2025 Rogues Gallery list, a catalog of the city's most infamous not necessarily for criminal acts, but for their perceived social transgressions. Meghan Markle was featured prominently, an unmistakable nod to her polarizing presence in the public eye. The list positioned her alongside socialites, influencers, and a few unexpected figures who had angered LA's elite in one way or another. It was a reminder that, despite her carefully managed social media presence and Hollywood veneer, the world was watching. The world was talking. And now, thanks to a live TV jab, the conversation had taken a turn for the dramatic. Inside the boutique, staff whispered. On social media, hashtags trended. In Montecito, the gossip mill churned. Everywhere Meghan turned, it seemed, people were analyzing, judging, comparing, and mocking. The Montecito Diva label emerged, a phrase loaded with irony and critique. It implied privilege, entitlement, and a flair for drama, all things that live television had now amplified in an unforgettable viral moment. And Meghan, despite her extensive experience navigating media storms, found herself facing a situation she couldn't simply control or spin. But the most compelling part of this story isn't just the humiliation. It's what came after. The reaction, the ripple effects, the unexpected twists that followed in the days and weeks after SNL. Because live television, once aired, cannot be unaired. Clips exist forever, screenshots endure, commentary lingers. And in the case of Meghan Markle, those moments became fodder for an endless loop of cultural conversation. Late-night shows, podcasts, influencer commentaries, celebrity gossip blogs, even royal watchers who scrutinized her every move with near-military precision. The joke, short and seemingly harmless, evolved into a complex narrative about celebrity, image, privilege, and public perception. Imagine, for a moment, the psychological strain. A public figure who has meticulously constructed her image, who has spent years managing perception, suddenly exposed to the unfiltered, raw judgment of millions, live, without pause, without reprieve. How does one process that? How does one respond? According to insiders, Meghan was furious, but not the kind of private, quiet anger one might expect. There was frustration, embarrassment, and a sense of betrayal. She hadn't anticipated this level of ridicule on such a public stage. And yet, the cameras kept rolling. The audience kept watching. And social media, merciless as ever, ensured that nothing would remain private for long. The broader implications were equally significant. This wasn't just about a joke. This was a commentary on celebrity culture, on the power dynamics of media, and on how one offhand remark could redefine a public persona overnight. It raised questions. Could Meghan recover her image after such a public humiliation? Would the holiday hypocrite label stick, or would it fade with time? How did this moment intersect with her ongoing projects, her Hollywood engagements, her royal legacy, and her personal brand? The answers, as we will explore in this video, are as dramatic and complex as the moment itself. And yet, for all the analysis, all the gossip, all the speculation, one element remains undeniable. The scene was unforgettable. Live television, a sharp comedic line, a global audience. Ingredients that combined to create a moment of public scrutiny few could rival. And for Meghan Markle, it was a reminder that fame is both a blessing and a curse, that image is fragile, and that even the most carefully curated persona can be upended in a matter of seconds. But what Meghan did next, that's what no one saw coming. How she reacted, how her team scrambled, and how the cultural conversation evolved are stories of ambition, strategy, ego, and drama. And they will keep you on the edge of your seat. The story of that night on the SNL stage is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning. And as we move forward, you're about to witness a cascade of events that reveal the true cost of being a Montecito diva, a Hollywood influencer, and a global figure under relentless scrutiny. The cameras, the jokes, the audience, everything collided in a way that was as unpredictable as it was unavoidable. What seemed like a simple moment of comedy transformed into a high-stakes spectacle that would dominate headlines, viral content, and celebrity chatter for weeks. And in the midst of it all, Meghan Markle had to navigate not only her personal reaction, but the storm of public opinion, social media criticism, and elite gossip. Could she survive it? Could she reclaim her image? Or had this live moment forever altered the narrative surrounding her? As we dive into the main chapters of this story, you'll see exactly how it unfolded. The moments before the joke, the precise delivery of Colin Jost's words, Meghan's visible reaction, the backstage tension, the immediate social media eruption, the boutique fallout, the celebrity commentary, and the lasting ripple effects that followed. Each chapter will reveal a layer of complexity, a twist you won't see coming, and emotional beats that illustrate just how raw and human even the most polished public figure can be under the glare of the spotlight. What do you think it feels like to walk onto one of the most iconic stages in television history, knowing millions of eyes are about to scrutinize your every move? For Meghan Markle, Stepping onto the Saturday Night Live stage was supposed to be another calculated, high-profile appearance, another opportunity to charm the audience, to reinforce her carefully crafted image. But as she entered the studio that night, few could have predicted that what awaited her was anything but routine. The air backstage was thick with anticipation. The faint hum of the crew checking cameras, the rustle of scripts, and the soft chatter of performers rehearsing lines created a charged atmosphere that could easily tip from excitement to chaos. Sources from behind the scenes later described Meghan's arrival as poised, confident, and impeccably styled, a woman who knew exactly how to present herself to a live audience and a global viewership. Her entourage was tight, each member playing a specific role, managing logistics, smoothing over potential missteps, and, crucially, protecting her from unexpected public scrutiny. Yet, even with this security net in place, SNL has always been unpredictable. The show is live, the audience is immediate, and timing is everything. Colin Jost, the host for the evening, was known for his biting humor, his ability to toe the line between satire and personal jab without warning. And in this charged environment, any small misstep could be amplified into a viral moment. Meghan walked through the hallways lined with production staff, the soft echo of her heels marking a rhythm that contrasted with the chaotic energy behind the scenes. Every eye seemed to track her, every whisper seemed louder than it was. Cameras were positioned strategically, capturing every angle, every facial expression. It was a theater of surveillance, and for someone who had spent years under the global microscope, it was familiar. But this time, the stakes felt different. The SNL stage itself was a character in the unfolding drama. Its bright lights, bold set designs, and live audience created a kind of performance pressure cooker. The audience, a mixture of regulars, invited guests, and industry insiders, buzzed with excitement, their energy both supportive and merciless. When Meghan took her place on stage, she did so with the same poise she had exhibited countless times before, an elegant posture, controlled expressions, and a smile that suggested confidence. Yet inside, tension simmered. Even the most polished appearances are vulnerable under the pressure of live performance. Backstage, the crew made last-minute adjustments. Microphones were checked, cues were rehearsed, and the teleprompter scrolled silently. Every detail mattered, because in live television, there are no do-overs. One slip, one misread cue, or one unexpected line could alter the narrative entirely. And in that environment, even someone as media-savvy as Meghan could not fully control how the evening would unfold. The audience awaited her introduction. The applause was polite, measured, and the tension palpable. Colin Jost stepped forward, a calm veneer masking the comedic edge he was about to unleash. He had a reputation for sharp timing and razor wit, the kind that could be flattering or brutal depending on the target. And as he began to speak, there was a sense among the crew that this moment could define the night, and perhaps leave a lasting mark on Meghan's public persona. What made this stage so treacherous wasn't just the live broadcast. It was the combination of expectation, preparation, and the unpredictable nature of comedy. Live television thrives on spontaneity, and even the most carefully scripted appearances can go off script in an instant. Meghan's presence, poised and elegant, was juxtaposed with the energy of the audience and the sharpness of Jost's humor, a mix that would prove combustible. As the cameras rolled, the tension in the studio became almost tangible. The bright lights reflected off the polished stage, creating an almost surreal atmosphere where reality and performance blurred. Every eye was on Meghan, every movement recorded and analyzed. The first few seconds of her appearance were critical. A smile, a nod, a laugh at the right moment could set the tone for the entire show. But as the audience cheered, a small ripple of unease could be sensed. Something was about to happen that would disrupt the carefully orchestrated rhythm. Even before the first joke landed, insiders noted subtle shifts in body language. Meghan's smile, though maintained, carried a hint of tension. Her eyes scanned the room, the cameras, and perhaps even the script, as if anticipating the unexpected. It was a quiet reminder that even those most accustomed to the spotlight can feel exposed when the stakes are highest. The stage itself seemed to pulse with energy. The set, adorned with bright backdrops, props, and strategically placed lighting, created a spectacle designed to captivate and entertain. For viewers at home, it would appear seamless, effortless. But behind the scenes, every detail was a potential point of failure. The crew, unaware of how the evening's humor would land, prepared for any reaction, knowing that live television has a unique power. It can elevate, it can amuse, and it can utterly humiliate in equal measure. And then it happened. The moment that would define the evening, the moment that would send shockwaves through social media, gossip columns, and celebrity discourse. Colin Jost, standing at the ready, delivered the first line that would alter the narrative entirely. The words were precise, calculated, and pointed. "Holiday hypocrite." The audience erupted. Laughter, gasps, applause, a mixture of delight and shock rippled through the studio. Meghan's smile faltered, her composure shaken ever so slightly. What should have been a simple, pleasant introduction had transformed into a moment of public scrutiny, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of the studio. And yet, the true drama was only beginning. Backstage, the production team and Meghan's entourage exchanged urgent glances. Social media, already buzzing with anticipation, began to ignite. Within seconds, snippets of the performance were being recorded, shared, and analyzed. The phrase "holiday hypocrite" began its rapid journey from live joke to viral sensation. For Meghan, this was more than a joke. It was a challenge to her carefully cultivated image. The carefully constructed narrative of elegance, sophistication, and social consciousness collided with humor designed to puncture pretension. The live audience had seen it. The cameras had captured it. And the world would soon react in ways that no amount of preparation could control. What happened next would shape the rest of the night and set the stage for a cascade of reactions, controversies, and viral moments. Meghan's poise, though admirable, would be tested in ways she had not anticipated. The interplay of live television, sharp comedic timing, and the unpredictability of public reaction created a situation where nothing was certain and every moment could escalate into headline news. What does it feel like to have the world watching, to be in a room full of people waiting for you to respond, and then to hear words that sting like a public slap? For Meghan Markle, that moment arrived the instant Colin Jost opened his mouth. The joke was short, surgical, and devastating. "Holiday hypocrite." Just two words that instantly captured the tension, the contrast, and the contradiction in her public persona. In that split second, the carefully constructed image she had worked so hard to maintain, graceful, charitable, polished, was under attack, live on one of the most visible stages in the world. The audience's reaction was immediate. Laughter erupted, mixed with gasps and murmurs of surprise. Some were delighted, entertained by the audacity. Others were shocked at the severity of the jab. Live television, after all, has a way of amplifying every nuance, every reaction. The cameras caught Meghan's face, her controlled smile faltering, her eyes betraying the tension underneath. It was a humanizing moment, one that made millions feel they were seeing her not as a public figure or a duchess, but as a person under extreme pressure. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere was chaotic. Production crew members exchanged worried glances, knowing that live television does not forgive mistakes or miscalculations. Meghan's team, trained to handle crises and public embarrassment, immediately went into high-alert mode, whispering instructions, smoothing over cues, and attempting to maintain her composure. But the joke had landed in a way that no amount of preparation could fully mitigate. What made this particular jab so sharp was its accuracy. The term "holiday hypocrite" didn't just sound funny, it resonated with public perception. It reflected a tension between Meghan's philanthropic statements and the perception of her lifestyle, a lavish Montecito mansion, extravagant trips, and an almost regal approach to life in Los Angeles. For some, it was a humorous observation. For others, it was an indictment. And for Meghan, it was a direct challenge to the narrative she had carefully curated. The timing of Jost's delivery was also critical. In comedy, timing can be everything, and in this case, it was lethal. He paused just long enough for the audience to absorb the contrast between the phrase and Meghan's poised demeanor, then delivered it with a smirk that emphasized the irony. The audience, conditioned to respond to his sharp wit, reacted immediately, amplifying the effect. For viewers at home, it was comedic gold. For Meghan, it was a moment of unexpected vulnerability. As the laughter subsided, Meghan attempted to regain control. A polite chuckle, a nod, a carefully measured smile. These were her tools, honed through years of public appearances and media scrutiny. But Jost's line had created a momentary crack in her armor, one that the cameras captured in excruciating detail. Every subtle shift in expression, every slight hesitation, became fodder for analysis, discussion, and speculation. Social media began to explode almost instantly. Clips of the moment were posted to Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram within seconds, and hashtags related to the joke started trending worldwide. Fans and critics alike dissected the line, debating its implications, its fairness, and its comedic value. For Meghan, this was the start of a viral storm that would extend far beyond the studio, reaching into every corner of celebrity gossip, royal commentary, and social media discourse. The reaction wasn't limited to the audience or social media. Industry insiders, Hollywood elites, and royal watchers began weighing in, each adding their interpretation of the moment. For some, it confirmed existing perceptions about Meghan, the idea that her public image of charity and sophistication was at odds with her personal lifestyle. For others, it was an overreach, a moment of unnecessary humiliation broadcast to millions. And for Meghan herself, it was a clear signal that even the most carefully planned appearances could be undermined by a single well-timed joke. What happened next was equally revealing. Meghan's body language shifted subtly but perceptibly. Her posture remained elegant, but her hands fidgeted slightly, her eyes darted briefly to her team, and her carefully managed smile faltered. Observers noted the tension in her jaw, the tightness in her shoulders, and the way she held herself in a moment that was meant to be lighthearted. It was a perfect example of how live performance, humor, and public scrutiny intersect to create moments that are simultaneously humanizing and humiliating. Meanwhile, Colin Jost continued his set, seemingly oblivious to the magnitude of his impact. To him, it was comedy, an observation delivered with precision and timing. To the audience, it was entertainment. To Meghan, it was a challenge, a direct confrontation with public perception, and a trigger for a chain of events that would dominate headlines for weeks. The boutique's 2025 villain list added another layer to the tension. Meghan's presence on that list, coupled with Jost's public jab, created a perfect storm of scrutiny and ridicule. Suddenly, she wasn't just a guest on SNL. She was a figure whose lifestyle, choices, and personality were being dissected in real time by the public, the media, and Hollywood insiders alike. The holiday hypocrite label became more than a joke. It was a symbol of the contradictions that surrounded her public image, amplified by her inclusion in the boutique's elite and notorious roster. The interplay of live television, celebrity culture, and media amplification created a high-stakes scenario. Every movement Meghan made, every glance she exchanged with Jost or her team, was captured, replayed, and analyzed. The joke had initiated a cascade of events: laughter in the studio, viral social media clips, celebrity commentary, and media scrutiny. Each layer added intensity, forcing Meghan to navigate a public relations challenge in real time, while simultaneously managing her own emotional response. Backstage, whispers and urgent consultations highlighted the immediacy of the moment. Meghan's team was quick to discuss possible damage control strategies, considering how clips might be edited, how statements might be released, and how public perception could be influenced in the aftermath. The line between humor and humiliation had blurred, and the consequences were unpredictable. For viewers, it might have seemed like a fleeting moment of comedy. For Meghan, it was a turning point. One that tested her ability to maintain composure, protect her image, and respond strategically. The audience had witnessed a live, unfiltered moment of vulnerability, and social media ensured that nothing would remain confined to the studio. The joke, concise as it was, had unleashed a ripple effect that extended far beyond the stage. As the night continued, every interaction, every smile, every gesture became part of the narrative. Meghan was no longer just a guest on a comedy show. She was a symbol of the tension between public perception and personal reality, a figure whose every move could be analyzed, critiqued, and turned into fodder for discussion. The holiday hypocrite moment was the catalyst for a deeper story about fame, scrutiny, and the fragile nature of carefully curated personas. But what Meghan did immediately after the joke, and how she attempted to regain control of the narrative, would surprise everyone. The reaction was not what anyone expected, and it set the stage for a cascade of consequences that would ripple through social media, Hollywood circles, and royal commentary. This single moment of humor had ignited a chain reaction, one that would redefine the evening, her public image, and the way millions perceived her in a matter of seconds. And just as the audience settled back, thinking the joke had passed, a subtle exchange occurred. One that only a few would notice, but one that hinted at the drama still to come. A whispered word, a slight glance, a moment of tension that suggested this was far from over. Colin Jost's jab was only the beginning. The fallout, the responses, and the reactions would continue to unfold, and no one, not even Meghan herself, could predict how far-reaching the consequences would be. Imagine being placed on a list. Not a list of achievements, accolades, or honors, but a list of the city's most notorious figures. A list meant to amuse, provoke, and in some circles, shame. For Meghan Markle, this was exactly the situation she faced when LA's trendiest boutique released its 2025 Rogues Gallery, a curated catalog of individuals who had, through their choices, behavior, or perceived persona, become the talk of the town. And she was front and center. The boutique's list wasn't just a casual ranking. It was carefully compiled, with attention to notoriety, visibility, and, in many ways, social influence. Each figure featured carried a story, scandals, faux pas, luxurious indulgences, or moments of unintentional irony. These were the people who defined gossip culture in Los Angeles, the ones who shaped conversations at elite dinner parties, red carpets, and, increasingly, online platforms. And Meghan Markle, once a global duchess and now a Montecito-based celebrity, had earned a prominent spot. The announcement of the list coincided with the SNL broadcast, creating a perfect storm. While Colin Jost's holiday hypocrite joke dominated live television, the boutique's list amplified the scrutiny. Headlines screamed about Meghan's inclusion. Photos of her Montecito mansion circulated alongside commentary about her lifestyle, and influencers dissected every past philanthropic effort versus her extravagant living. Social media exploded, with memes, tweets, and TikTok videos framing her simultaneously as glamorous, controversial, and out of touch. Inside the boutique, employees and insiders whispered about Meghan's presence. She wasn't a local celebrity. They knew her as someone who had walked a global stage, who carried the weight of royal scrutiny, and who now had to navigate the fickle waters of LA's social elitism. Gossip flowed rapidly. Was she upset? Would she retaliate? How did the selection panel justify placing a former duchess alongside local socialites and media personalities known more for their scandal than their good deeds? The intrigue wasn't limited to LA. It quickly became national news, proving how powerful curated lists can be in shaping public perception. The boutique itself had a reputation for blending fashion, culture, and notoriety. Every year, it released a list of names that reflected the city's social currents: the movers, the shakers, and the controversial. Being on it was a double-edged sword. For some, it was validation, a form of celebrity acknowledgement. For others, it was a public admonishment. Meghan fell squarely into the latter category, labeled a figure whose influence and lifestyle drew both admiration and criticism. For Meghan, the implications were immediate. Her inclusion on the list wasn't merely a critique. It was a public statement that reinforced Colin Jost's live joke. Where the SNL gag had hinted at hypocrisy, the boutique's Rogues Gallery validated it in the eyes of LA society. Suddenly, her holiday outings, charitable appearances, and public statements were being juxtaposed with her luxurious lifestyle, creating a narrative of contradiction. She was both celebrated and criticized, admired for her past accomplishments, but mocked for her present behavior. This duality is what made the situation particularly tense. Meghan had long been conscious of her image, carefully balancing her celebrity endeavors with the expectations that came from both royal history and Hollywood life. But here, in a single moment, her persona was fragmented. The holiday hypocrite joke painted her as performative, while the rogues gallery suggested she was out of touch with the very communities she claimed to support. For the public, the combination was irresistible. It was juicy, ironic, and visually compelling. For Meghan, it was a challenge she could not simply ignore. The online reaction magnified the effect. Influencers created side-by-side images contrasting Meghan's charitable work with her Montecito lifestyle. Memes poked fun at her fashion choices, her social appearances, and her social media posts. Discussion threads debated whether she deserved the label, while journalists and gossip columnists analyzed every past action through this new lens. Suddenly, the boutique's curated joke had escaped its intended audience, going viral across the globe, and Meghan found herself at the center of an international media maelstrom. The boutique's event also became a focal point. While Meghan was not present in person for the official unveiling, the photos, videos, and social media posts created the same effect. It was as if she were sitting there, absorbing the reactions of the elite crowd, knowing they were evaluating her every move, every past decision. Her absence did little to mitigate the impact. If anything, it heightened the mystique and the perceived controversy. People imagined her reaction, debated her motives, and speculated on the private consequences, creating a narrative that she had little control over. Interestingly, the list also included individuals who were intentionally provocative, seeking attention through outrageous behavior or scandalous revelations. Meghan, however, was different. Her notoriety came not from calculated rebellion, but from the collision of celebrity, royalty, and personal ambition. The contrast made her inclusion all the more striking. She was being judged by a set of social rules that didn't fully apply to her, yet she was expected to conform, entertain, and navigate the consequences seamlessly. The media coverage emphasized this tension. Headlines across entertainment outlets highlighted her inclusion with tongue-in-cheek humor, framing her as a Montecito diva and implying a disconnect between her public statements and private life. Social media amplified these messages, turning the boutique's curated critique into a viral phenomenon. Each post, tweet, and video fueled the narrative that Meghan was living a life at odds with her projected values, a living contradiction now on display for the world to scrutinize. Backstage, Meghan's team was aware of the dual impact: Colin Jost's live joke and the boutique's rogues gallery. The synchronization of these two events created an unexpected challenge. Not only had she been publicly embarrassed on live television, but her social standing in Los Angeles was also being questioned, critiqued, and shared online with a ferocity that was hard to control. The intersection of live performance, curated criticism, and viral media created a perfect storm, one that threatened to dominate headlines and public discussion for weeks. Psychologically, this was a pivotal moment. Meghan had spent years navigating intense public scrutiny. From royal expectations to Hollywood gossip to social media debates, each experience had required poise, strategy, and adaptability. But the boutique's villain list represented a different kind of challenge. It wasn't about facts or achievements. It was about perception, rumor, and social narrative. Suddenly, she was no longer just managing her image. She was being actively interpreted, criticized, and debated by a culture she could not fully control. As the night progressed, the implications of being labeled in such a public way began to emerge. Social circles buzzed, influencers commented, tabloids analyzed, and loyal fans defended her. The story had transcended the boutique itself, becoming a reflection of wider societal judgments: wealth versus philanthropy, public persona versus private life, glamour versus perceived hypocrisy. Meghan was thrust into a position where her every action could be interpreted as evidence supporting or refuting the label placed upon her. And just when it seemed that the boutique's list might fade into the background of a media cycle already dominated by Colin Jost's joke, a new twist emerged. Influencers began juxtaposing the SNL clip with the boutique's commentary, creating a viral loop that intensified the scrutiny. The phrase "holiday hypocrite" became inseparable from the Montecito diva label, embedding itself into public consciousness. The impact was instantaneous, extending from Hollywood gossip feeds to mainstream news, from social media debates to international commentary. But what Meghan did, how she processed this double humiliation, and how she began to respond, would surprise everyone. This was more than a moment of embarrassment. It was a challenge to her authority, influence, and ability to manage her own narrative. And in true Meghan Markle fashion, the story was far from over. In Los Angeles, reputation is currency. Every glance, every comment, every social media post can either elevate someone to iconic status or transform them into a figure of ridicule. For Meghan Markle, the phrase Montecito diva began to stick almost immediately after the boutique's 2025 villain list and Colin Jost's SNL jab. It wasn't just a label. It was a narrative, a lens through which every action, appearance, and public statement would now be interpreted. And in a town where optics matter more than reality, that reputation carried enormous weight. The Montecito community, known for its exclusive estates, high-profile residents, and carefully curated social scene, is notoriously sensitive to image. For Meghan, being dubbed a diva wasn't merely a playful tease. It was a direct challenge to her social credibility. Sources close to the community described the moment the list and joke went viral as a turning point. Invitations, once casually extended, now required careful calculation. Conversations at boutique openings, charity galas, and neighborhood gatherings suddenly carried subtext. Is she the same Meghan? People would ask, not necessarily about her behavior, but about the perception others might now have of her. Media outlets quickly latched onto the term, using it as shorthand to discuss her personality, lifestyle, and social interactions. Headlines described her as Montecito royalty meets Hollywood diva or the Duchess of Drama in Montecito. Each article, while varying in tone, reinforced the public image of Meghan as someone glamorous, powerful, and, simultaneously, difficult to handle. The repetition of the phrase across platforms, from tabloids to social media feeds, cemented the label in the collective imagination. The Montecito diva reputation wasn't entirely undeserved, according to insiders. Those familiar with Meghan's private interactions in the community described her as demanding, particular, and highly attentive to detail. She expected excellence in service, punctuality in appointments, and professionalism in her entourage. For someone accustomed to managing high-stakes public appearances, this attention to detail may have seemed necessary. But in a social environment where subtlety is valued, such assertiveness can be reframed as diva behavior. It wasn't just small moments, either. High-profile events, from charity fundraisers to boutique openings, became opportunities for scrutiny. Reports began circulating that Meghan had specific expectations for seating arrangements, lighting, and even floral displays. While these requests could easily be framed as a desire for professionalism or a pursuit of perfection, in the court of public opinion, they were transformed into evidence of a diva persona. Every Instagram post showcasing her Montecito lifestyle, from private gardens to designer wardrobes, was interpreted through this lens, reinforcing the narrative. Social media, of course, played a decisive role. Fans and critics alike dissected every photo and story, often exaggerating minor details for dramatic effect. Memes emerged portraying Meghan as both glamorous and impossible, witty yet demanding, philanthropic yet extravagant. Influencers debated whether the diva image was a deliberate persona or a consequence of her environment, and online forums exploded with commentary on her behavior. In effect, the term Montecito diva had transcended its original context, becoming shorthand for public fascination and judgment. The intersection of her SNL humiliation and boutique notoriety amplified the stakes. Live television had exposed her to immediate ridicule. The boutique's villain list had positioned her as a social antagonist. Now, the Montecito diva label made the narrative sticky. It wasn't simply about one joke or one curated list. It was a multifaceted reputation that was difficult to escape. For Meghan, every public appearance became an opportunity for the label to be reinforced, challenged, or scrutinized. Psychologically, the situation was complex. Reputation, after all, is a form of power. It can open doors, shape narratives, and influence social dynamics. But it can also act as a trap, constraining behavior, inviting judgment, and amplifying mistakes. Meghan, acutely aware of how image impacts opportunity and perception, faced a dilemma: how to maintain authenticity while navigating the heightened expectations and criticisms of a community quick to label and slow to forgive. The Montecito diva reputation also sparked internal conflicts within her team. Publicists, media consultants, and entourage members debated strategies. Should Meghan embrace the label with humor, turning criticism into a form of self-aware branding? Should she confront it directly, issuing statements to clarify misconceptions? Or should she simply ignore it, hoping that time and strategic appearances would shift the narrative? Each option carried risks, especially in a media environment hungry for drama. Meanwhile, the public continued to engage with the narrative in unpredictable ways. Fan communities speculated about her next moves, while critics scrutinized every appearance for evidence of diva behavior. Social media campaigns and commentary threads became echo chambers, reinforcing the reputation in ways that were increasingly difficult to control. Even those with neutral opinions began to frame Meghan's actions through the lens of the diva label, demonstrating the power of repeated messaging in shaping perception. Yet there was a paradox. While the Montecito diva image carried potential downsides, it also reinforced Meghan's influence. Divas, by definition, attract attention, command respect, and create a memorable presence. In a culture obsessed with celebrity, visibility is often synonymous with relevance. The very criticism intended to undermine her social standing simultaneously enhanced her prominence, keeping her at the center of conversation. For someone navigating the intersection of Hollywood and former royalty, attention, whether positive or negative, remains a form of currency. The term also influenced her broader interactions. Invitations to exclusive events became scrutinized more carefully. Philanthropic initiatives were analyzed not only for impact but for optics. Social media posts were evaluated for tone, presentation, and adherence to the diva narrative. Every public interaction carried potential for reinforcement or contradiction of the label. It was a delicate balancing act. And yet, the narrative had momentum that was difficult to halt. Media outlets, social commentators, and even casual observers had adopted the label as shorthand for her persona. The combination of public mockery, curated lists, and viral social media content had created a reputation that was sticky, enduring, and resistant to simple corrections or clarifications. For Meghan, each day required careful navigation, as any misstep could be amplified into evidence supporting the diva image. But as public fascination grew, so did the stakes. The narrative surrounding her Montecito diva persona intersected with ongoing projects, philanthropic efforts, and media appearances, creating a complex web of expectations and scrutiny. How she responded, or failed to respond, would define her public image for months to come. And while some would see her as navigating the challenges with poise, others would interpret every gesture as evidence of entitlement or arrogance. Just when it seemed the story had stabilized, an unexpected twist emerged. Whispers of behind-the-scenes tensions, rumors of disagreements with event organizers, and leaked anecdotes from insiders who suggested that Meghan's Montecito diva reputation was influencing not only social perceptions, but professional relationships. The narrative was evolving rapidly, fueled by both perception and partial truths, creating a high-stakes environment in which every action could have far-reaching consequences. And just as the label seemed to settle into the public imagination, a new development loomed on the horizon, something that would force Meghan to confront the perception of the Montecito diva head-on, and reveal whether the persona was an inescapable narrative or a challenge she could strategically navigate. In today's digital age, a single moment on live television or a curated list in a trendy boutique can explode into a worldwide conversation in minutes. For Meghan Markle, the combination of Colin Jost's SNL jab and her inclusion on the boutique's 2025 villain list created the perfect storm. Social media erupted almost instantly, transforming what could have been a fleeting moment of embarrassment into a viral spectacle that captured global attention. The reaction on platforms like Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and X/Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, was immediate and relentless. Hashtags referencing the holiday hypocrite joke and the Montecito diva label began trending within seconds of the broadcast. Clips of the SNL segment were shared, replayed, and remixed, accumulating millions of views within hours. Meme accounts seized the moment, pairing the live joke with images of Meghan's luxurious lifestyle. Photos of her Montecito mansion, her designer wardrobes, and her high-profile social outings, crafting a narrative that was both humorous and scathing. Influencers jumped into the fray, analyzing every facial expression, every pause, and every gesture. Some portrayed Meghan as misunderstood and unfairly targeted, emphasizing her philanthropic work and charitable engagements. Others leaned into the comedic gold of the moment, framing her as emblematic of celebrity excess. A Montecito diva out of touch with reality. The polarization was immediate and intense, reflecting a social media culture that thrives on rapid judgment and viral storytelling. The pace of the online conversation was staggering. Within hours, public opinion splintered into multiple narratives. There were those who defended her relentlessly, highlighting her accomplishments and questioning the fairness of both the SNL joke and the boutique's villain list. Others critiqued her choices, drawing connections between her public persona and perceived contradictions in her lifestyle. And then there were observers who simply treated the event as entertainment, sharing memes, jokes, and commentary purely for social engagement. The result was a digital echo chamber where every perspective was amplified and magnified. Beyond just commentary, the viral explosion had real-world consequences. Journalists and media outlets quickly reported on the social media frenzy, further amplifying the moment. Talk shows dissected her reaction, entertainment blogs offered analysis, and opinion pieces debated whether the label of Montecito diva was fair or merely the result of public fascination with royalty-turned-Hollywood celebrity. Each new article, clip, or post perpetuated the narrative, creating a feedback loop in which Meghan's image was both shaped and scrutinized simultaneously. The social media backlash also brought personal scrutiny. Fans and critics alike began examining her social media activity, highlighting photos, captions, and previous posts for perceived inconsistencies or examples supporting the Montecito diva narrative. Every vacation, charity visit, or public appearance became fodder for debate. Memes circulated comparing her charitable endeavors with her high-end lifestyle, creating a contrast that reinforced the holiday hypocrite perception. The line between playful critique and virulent attack blurred, making the environment increasingly hostile and unpredictable. This digital maelstrom had both immediate and longer-term effects. On a personal level, sources close to Meghan described her as initially stunned by the speed and intensity of the online reaction. Managing public perception had always been part of her life, but this viral moment demonstrated the unparalleled speed at which narratives can spread in today's interconnected world. Every gesture, every post, and every public appearance had to be carefully measured to avoid further backlash. On a professional level, her team scrambled to manage the fallout. Social media managers monitored trends in real time, PR consultants advised on potential statements, and communication strategists debated whether to respond publicly or let the conversation die down naturally. The stakes were high. In an era where public perception can influence partnerships, endorsements, and media opportunities, a single viral moment has the power to define a public figure's trajectory for months, even years. Interestingly, the viral explosion also highlighted the nuances of public fascination with Meghan. Many were not just critiquing her, they were captivated by her. Her ability to command attention, provoke debate, and remain a dominant figure in cultural conversations underscored the paradox of celebrity in the digital age. Criticism and adoration often coexist, and both serve to enhance relevance. Meghan's visibility was now undeniable, even if the conversation was not entirely favorable. The global nature of social media further complicated the situation. Clips of the SNL appearance and discussions of her Montecito diva reputation circulated across time zones, languages, and platforms, creating a sense that the scrutiny was omnipresent. No audience was isolated. No geographic boundary could protect her from the viral effects. Analysts noted that within 24 hours, the conversation had transcended the U.S., sparking commentary from media outlets and influencers in Europe, Asia, and Australia. The speed and scope of the reaction were unprecedented, a testament to the power of interconnected platforms. The backlash also took a personal toll. Meghan's team reported heightened stress, the need for constant monitoring, and the challenge of maintaining composure in an environment where every action could be dissected publicly. Emotional labor, often invisible in discussions of celebrity, became central. The psychological impact of seeing one's image debated, mocked, and praised simultaneously is intense. For Meghan, the viral moment was more than a professional challenge. It was a deeply personal one, requiring resilience, strategy, and careful navigation. Despite the pressure, there were moments of subtle triumph. Social media also provided a platform for supporters to rally, creating a counter-narrative that emphasized her achievements, charitable work, and commitment to public causes. Hashtags celebrating her philanthropy trended alongside critiques, reminding audiences that public perception is rarely monolithic. The interplay between praise and criticism created a dynamic tension that ensured Meghan remained at the center of conversation, regardless of the tone of the discussion. And then came the next twist. Amid the viral frenzy, rumors began circulating about private responses, emails, phone calls, and behind-the-scenes actions Meghan was allegedly taking to manage the fallout. Insider accounts suggested that she was not sitting passively. She was strategizing, engaging with her team, and preparing for the inevitable media follow-up. The narrative was evolving in real time, blurring the line between public perception and private action, and setting the stage for further escalation. By the end of the first 48 hours, the SNL joke and the boutiques list had coalesced into a sustained viral phenomenon. Meghan Markle's reputation as a Montecito diva and holiday hypocrite was no longer just a talking point. It had become a defining moment, one that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and public discourse for weeks. Every action she took afterward would be viewed through this lens, influencing how her persona was understood and discussed globally. But the story was far from over. The viral explosion had opened a door to new controversies, media interpretations, and unexpected alliances. How Meghan would navigate this intense scrutiny, balance public perception, and respond to the challenges of viral culture would define not just her image, but the trajectory of her public influence. The moment Meghan Markle's holiday hypocrite label and Montecito diva reputation went viral, the public response was immediate and astonishingly divided. Within hours, millions around the world were forming opinions, commenting on social media, creating memes, and debating the fairness of the scrutiny. Unlike in decades past, where celebrity gossip was confined to newspapers or late-night talk shows, today's public discourse was instantaneous, global, and multidimensional. Meghan was no longer just a former duchess or Hollywood figure. She had become a lightning rod for collective fascination and judgment. At first glance, the opinions were polar opposites. On one side, supporters rallied to her defense, highlighting the charitable work, advocacy, and causes she had championed over the years. They pointed out that her lifestyle, while luxurious, was hardly out of the ordinary for someone in her position, and that the SNL joke and boutique list were examples of public scrutiny being taken too far. Many fans and social media communities framed the situation as an attack on a woman who had already endured unprecedented public pressure, often referencing her past experiences with the royal family and the media. These supporters weren't silent observers. They became active participants in the narrative. Hashtags defending Meghan trended alongside those criticizing her. Posts of her philanthropic endeavors were shared widely, and articles praising her social impact were circulated. Social media forums filled with impassioned defenses, reminding the world of her work on mental health, gender equality, and humanitarian issues. In many ways, this group sought to humanize her, counterbalancing the caricature being constructed in real time. On the other side, critics were relentless. For them, the holiday hypocrite joke perfectly encapsulated what they perceived as Meghan's contradictions. Public statements advocating for simplicity, humility, or charity, contrasted with the lavish lifestyle, Montecito mansion, and celebrity appearances. The Montecito diva label became shorthand for entitlement, perceived self-importance, and a disconnect between words and actions. Memes proliferated, often portraying her as aloof, demanding, or out of touch, amplifying the narrative that her public persona was performative. The divisiveness extended beyond social media. Talk shows, podcasts, and even mainstream news outlets weighed in, creating a feedback loop that intensified the scrutiny. Pundits and commentators debated whether the public's reaction was fair, whether Meghan was being treated differently because of her gender, or whether the viral narrative was a reflection of societal fascination with fame and power. The conversation was nuanced, yet the most visible content, memes, headlines, and clips, often simplified the narrative, making her appear either villainous or sympathetic, depending on the source. This polarization had measurable consequences. Search trends for Meghan Markle skyrocketed, with viewers searching not only for the SNL clip, but also for commentary, reactions, and analysis. Engagement rates on social media posts mentioning her reached unprecedented levels. Every time she made a public appearance, posted online, or engaged with media outlets, it was filtered through the lens of the Montecito diva narrative. The viral storm didn't fade, it expanded, evolving with each interaction, opinion piece, and viral clip. The public's reaction was also shaped by context. Meghan was no stranger to intense scrutiny, having spent years under the royal microscope, facing relentless media coverage and public debate. But the convergence of live television mockery, curated villain lists, and social media virality created a new dynamic. This wasn't just traditional celebrity gossip. It was a multi-layered phenomenon that blended comedy, social commentary, and digital amplification. The global audience wasn't passive. They actively participated in shaping the narrative, often adding their own interpretations, biases, and judgments. Interestingly, the division in opinion also highlighted broader societal conversations. Discussions about privilege, wealth, gendered expectations, and media treatment of women in power surfaced repeatedly. Supporters framed the narrative as an example of systemic bias and disproportionate scrutiny, while critics emphasized personal accountability and the contradictions between public statements and private behavior. The debate became as much about cultural values as it was about Meghan herself. The intensity of the divided opinions also created a sense of real-world impact. Brands, celebrities, and influencers weighed in, either defending her or capitalizing on the viral moment. The boutique itself saw an increase in attention, as the controversy inadvertently promoted their brand and elevated their curated list to international prominence. Even late-night hosts referenced the viral narrative, creating secondary waves of attention that further entrenched the public's divided perspectives. Meanwhile, Meghan and her team faced a high-stakes challenge. Navigating a global conversation that was polarized, fast-moving, and emotionally charged required careful strategy. Every statement, appearance, or social media post could be dissected, critiqued, or celebrated, depending on the audience. Decisions that might have once been routine now carried amplified consequences. The team had to manage perception in real time, often anticipating public reaction before events even occurred. The emotional toll on Meghan was equally significant. Public opinion, especially when divided so sharply, can feel personal, even when it is largely performative or sensationalized. Sources close to her noted heightened stress, sleepless nights, and an acute awareness that her every move was being observed. The viral narrative had transformed not just her public image, but her personal experience of daily life, from interactions with staff to engagement with fans and critics alike. Despite the challenges, the polarized reaction also underscored her influence. Whether admired or criticized, she remained central to public discourse. Engagement metrics demonstrated that her visibility was unprecedented, proving that in the modern era, relevance is often measured not by universal praise, but by the ability to capture attention and sustain conversation. The controversy had solidified her status as a figure whose actions and image are constantly in the spotlight. And just as it seemed that the public conversation had stabilized into predictable support and criticism, a new development emerged. Leaks from insiders, unverified anecdotes, and behind-the-scenes commentary began circulating, suggesting that Meghan's response to the SNL joke and boutique's label was more proactive and more strategic than anyone had anticipated. Rumors hinted at calculated appearances, media interactions, and private discussions that were designed to influence perception and reclaim narrative control. Behind every viral moment, there is a private reality that few ever see. For Meghan Markle, The combination of Colin Jost's SNL jab, the boutique's 2025 villain list, and the subsequent social media explosion created a situation that demanded careful, strategic handling, but also elicited raw, personal reactions. What the public saw, a controlled smile, a polite chuckle, a poised demeanor, was only the surface. Beneath it, Meghan was navigating a storm of emotions, calculations, and immediate decisions that would set the tone for days to come. The first minutes after the SNL joke were critical. Sources close to Meghan describe a mixture of surprise and frustration. The words holiday hypocrite carried a sting not because they were untrue, but because of the timing, the public delivery, and the amplification. On live television, in front of millions, there is no room for nuance, no time for explanation, and no possibility of controlling the audience's reaction. The laughter that followed Jost's line was both validating for the comedian and personally jarring for Meghan, highlighting the tension between her public persona and the viral moment unfolding in real time. Her immediate response was carefully measured. Public appearances, body language, and facial expressions were all calibrated to maintain composure. She smiled, nodded, and maintained elegance, signaling to the cameras and audience that she was unfazed. But those closest to her noticed subtle cues, a fleeting look of tension in her eyes, a slight tightening of the jaw, and micro-expressions that suggested a combination of irritation and disbelief. These small details, imperceptible to the casual viewer, were magnified in slow-motion replays and frame-by-frame social media analysis, adding layers of meaning to an already charged moment. Backstage, her team convened rapidly. Social media managers, PR strategists, and communications consultants worked in real time, assessing immediate threats and opportunities. The viral spread of the SNL clip and boutique list meant that any misstep could be amplified exponentially. Decisions had to be made quickly, whether to release a statement, respond publicly, or let the situation evolve organically. Each choice carried risk, particularly given the global attention Meghan consistently commands. Privately, Meghan's reactions were more nuanced. Sources describe a mix of emotions, frustration, amusement, defiance, and determination. She reportedly recognized the strategic implications of the moment. Viral attention, even if critical, maintains relevance, and relevance can be leveraged if approached wisely. At the same time, she felt the sting of public judgment, the challenge of perception management, and the discomfort of having a personal narrative reframed by external forces. The tension between public poise and private vulnerability was palpable. The boutique's 2025 villain list further complicated the private calculus. Being labeled a Montecito diva and placed among the